All right, it looks like we're live. Good to go. Sorry for being gone for a few days. I'm going to be talking about a little bit of political stuff. I'm going to be talking about economic stuff in another video after this one. And then later in the day, we'll have the market recap at 3 p.m. So today's going to be a busy day. This video is going to be focused a lot around Kamala Harris and her policies and then just previous track record. We'll also be talking about the Democratic National Convention and some of the things that are going on there, and how I believe that could be impacted by protests that are looking to happen and have already started to happen. We'll also be talking about Trump, some of his policies, some of the things that are going on with his TikTok campaign and changes in his campaign in regard to Tulsi Gabbard being a part of it, pulling in a previous person that helped him with another campaign historically when he won his election. And so we'll be looking at a bunch of different stuff, that and just many more. But I want to start off here with this. And let me put my headset on because I don't want the audio to be interfered with. But this is a reference to a former federal prosecutor that's slamming Tim Walz for basically, I think it was acquitting. Well, we'll just play it. We'll play it and then we'll talk to it. So 1 second here. I'm just going to switch my audio and then we'll give this a go and you guys can listen. 1 sec.
And some people might know his story because Mayan Burrell is a Bloods criminal street gang member. I charged the Bloods in a more recent case. But Mayan Burrell shot and killed an 11-year-old girl who was doing her homework on her kitchen table in Minneapolis. He was convicted, and he did almost 20 years in prison. And after he maintained his innocence, which he definitely wasn't, guess who commuted his sentence? Tim Walz commuted his sentence. And not long after being off of probation for 3 months, this criminal, Mayan Burrell, got picked up for having drugs and a gun in his car.
Oh, God.
And guess who bailed him out? Because he was set free. Guess who bailed him out? The Minnesota Freedom Fund, the same fund that Kamala Harris was soliciting funds for during the riots.
Wow.
So at this point, the Democrat Party, Tim Walz, and Kamala Harris have to answer for that. So does my Democrat opponent, Angie Craig.
Well,
Yeah, so that's frightening. Again, when you have somebody who is shooting guns to attack other gang members, kills an 11-year-old girl, gets acquitted or basically released, and then is carrying guns and drugs again, it's a sign of what's happened in Minnesota. I live near this state. I can speak to it. It's insanity. All right, we're gonna skip this. There's a few things I wanted to go over. I want to make sure I get the most relevant data. I don't want all this old, outdated stuff. You guys know bookmarks get a little weird. All right, so we're going to start at the top. So in regard to campaign issues, one of the things that Kamala Harris was talking about doing was building like 3 to 4 million homes, just doing all these things that are typical socialist agenda. So I want you to hear from somebody in the real estate sector for 24 years talking about her housing plan, just so you can get her take, and then I'll give you mine too.
The Kamala Harris-Tim Walz campaign is unveiling a housing plan today. As a housing expert, someone who's been in the business for 24 years, owns my own firm, and has been heavily involved in policy issues at all levels of government, I felt obligated to bring y'all some viewpoint on what's going to be rolled out, especially since I seriously doubt that the National Association of Realtors is going to make commentary on a presidential campaign's policy. The first item you're going to see talked about is a wonderful plan to call for the construction of 3 million new housing units. Now, that does sound good, and I agree that it's good to have conversation about the fact that our supply is the problem, not so much demand. However, couched in that wonderful little headline is a real problem, friends, because their goal is to have the federal government take over zoning. Zoning should only be under local control. Cabarrus County, North Carolina, where I am, is wildly different than Mecklenburg County.
That is insanity. The volume's low. I'll turn it up. That is insanity. So I don't know how much you heard that, but having the federal government decide zoning regulations for local governments, that is just absurd. So I turned up the volume. I'll make sure it sounds good. 1 sec here. I'm going to play.
Right next door. And frankly, we don't have the foggiest idea what's best for Syracuse, New York, or Kansas City, Missouri, or even Kansas City, Kansas. There is no universal housing market. There is no universal housing plan. If the federal government gets to take over zoning, friends, here's what that looks like. That means that you may have a parcel of land that you would like to develop, and the federal government says yes or no as to what you can do. I don't like giving the federal government any control when this country was built to make sure that every zip code could have its own personality and its own leadership. So yes, we need new housing, but not at the expense of local control.
So this is, again, this is insane. I'm going to let her speak, but the federal government, you can see, in my opinion, how power hungry Kamala is, and there's going to be some of that we're talking to in some of these other clips. But federal government should not have control of local jurisdictions and how they zone. That federal government is already so inefficient. And if you allow them to do this, I can't even imagine what America looks like, even in a couple of years, let alone by the end of the next term. Let's let her finish.
The second thing being proposed is, of course, rent control. And that sounds good if you're in a rental and you feel like you're paying too much.
Oh, renting and pricing controls. We'll be covering that in a lot today, guys.
Friends, the way that you solve the high cost of rent is to add more rental units, but not rental units by hedge funds, which has been the plan for the last few years. What we need are more mom and pop investors that are able to make local decisions about zoning and local decisions about their land so they can provide more units. When you put in rent controls, that caps what I as a landlord can charge for rent. That sounds okay if you're the consumer, but friends, it's been tried in all kinds of markets, all kinds of cities, and it does not work because as an investor, I'm not going to put my money into something where I can't control the market conditions. I mean, I can never control market conditions, but I can't respond to market conditions. Pay attention. Every city that has
Anybody who owns real estate should understand this concept. This will never work. History tells us this will never work. We can go back thousands of years and see that these kinds of plans where the federal government grabs more control and then says, oh, no, you can't do these things, ends up removing the incentive to invest in real estate and build more. So if you want a shortage of all the things that they're talking about in regard to price controls, and you'll get that. You'll get that. And then the government, if they're going to build some houses, will be inefficient. They'll overpay. It'll be a flippin' disaster. So I'm trying not to cuss because I already get demonetized so easily. We're trying to test a few things here, guys. And Carmine Glitch, thank you very much for subscribing. It helps me immensely because I am being suppressed. And it seems like in regard to the volume and my reach and also monetization. So everything you guys do helps.
Rent controls loses rental units. What happens when you lose units? That's right. You have another supply issue. This is not good. It is terrible. And by the way, if you're a tenant, you can get trapped in your unit because let's just say you and your family have a large rent-controlled unit, and then those wonderful children grow up and move away. I feel you. Well, now you're in this giant unit, but you can't afford to move because you're trapped by your low rental cost. Meanwhile, a young family down the hall wants to move into your larger unit, but they can't because they're trapped too, and they're just out of space. It is not a good way to control a market. Rent controls are bad. What we should have instead are better local zoning decisions. Now, the third thing in this plan is that there's going to be an offer of free money, down payment assistance, help those first-time buyers get in a house. I love down payment assistance, especially when it's done by tax credits, when it's done by bond money approved by voters. Y'all, if the federal government wants to hand people money for buying houses, that's what causes inflation. How is it going to be that we can get y'all educated on this? Every time the government starts printing money, as young people say, it goes brrr. When the Fed prints money, that causes inflation. And so when you add $25,000 in free money to a house, you just drove the cost up by $25,000. I just wish that when any political person rolls out a housing plan, they'd talk to some of us in housing first. Friends, these decisions might sound big picture. You might not be interested in housing policy, but what you need to know is that these decisions will impact you, your decisions in your pocketbook, so vote accordingly.
So well said, so well articulated. Again, you just, this doesn't work throughout history. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, and we're going to be talking about more of it in a second too. There's a whole bunch about that. Talking from the perspective of some rich Democratic billionaires and their thoughts on pricing controls. They're astonished by it. People who wanted to support Kamala Harris are just wrecked by it. We'll be seeing some of that in a second. I also wanted to point out the irony in this image right here of the Democratic National Convention building multiple walls around the convention to keep unwanted elements out of the convention. It's astonishing to me, and it sounds like they're going to have ID verification requirements too. So Democrats are against ID verification for illegals being able to vote in the election, and they're against building a wall on the southern border, but they're sure as heck perfectly fine doing that for their convention so that it doesn't have problems. The irony, the hypocrisy, the stupidity of this is astonishing to me, but also not. Homar's catalog, a liberal from California, said, it's important for those who took Econ 101 to explain why price controls don't work to Kamala voters, even though they will attack you for it. This is literally somebody who would want to vote for Kamala saying that this is just stupid and idiotic. I won't go over this one. This is a little bit old. This is the Google blames glitch for campaign Harris. I've already done enough of that. Let's keep going down here. So, and again, we've already seen that one too. I don't know what's happened with my bookmarks. Let me go back. It's this. There's just a weird glitchy system for bookmarks inside of here, and so like half of them are gone. So I'll see if I can find what I'm looking for here real quick. I might have to go down a little bit further. Yeah. Now we're getting there. Okay, cool. All right, good. This is what I want. So we're going to start right here. So this is talking about. No, wait. We're going to start right here. This says leopards don't change their spots. I learned that with the swipe of my pen, I could charge someone with the lowest level offense. Just listen to this. Listen to Kamala's words as she talks about the power she realized she had in regard to convictions. It's nuts.
Person could be arrested.
1 second.
I
There you go.
learned. I think I was, 22 when I started that work. I learned that with the swipe of my pen, I could charge someone with the lowest level offense. And because of the swipe of my pen, that person could be arrested. They could sit in jail for at least 48 hours. They could lose time from work, and their family maybe lose their job. They'd have to come out of their own pocket to help hire a lawyer. They'd lose standing in their community. All because of the swipe of my pen. Weeks later, I could dismiss the charges, but their life would forever be changed. So I learned at a very young age.
I'm sorry, Kate, did you just listen to this woman? She's talking about how powerful she felt, that the swipe of a pen, she could basically destroy people. And then later on, she could just let the charges go. Is that not incredibly frightening? Is that not incredibly frightening if you listen to the words that this woman says and what she's planning on doing? Now here, the Democratic National Convention is already seeing heavy amounts of protest. And what's fascinating is listening to the words that the protesters are saying. Listen to this.
Or we'll bring the war home. We'll bring the war home. Piggy, go back home. Piggy, go back home. Or we'll bring the war home.
So they're threatening to bring the war back to our country. Isn't that fun? This is just some of the infighting that we're seeing from the Democrats. There's supposed to be 100,000 people protesting the Democratic National Convention. It's going to be an absolute shit show. People aren't ready for it. Let's listen to the rest.
DNC, go home. DNC, go home. Or we'll bring the war home.
And it's only going to amp up, guys. It's only going to amp up. I've been saying this for a while. Here on August 15th, a few days ago, I said, this is what Kamala Harris will do to this country if she gains power. This is showing when Maduro got elected, and he implemented the same kind of plans that that we were hearing from Kamala Harris. And this is before sanctions kicked off, okay? This is, everybody talks about, oh, but it's sanctions that hurt Venezuela. Bullshit. It's not true. And look at what happened with interest rates after Maduro. And just even from the threat, you can see when he started winning in the polls and people thought he was going to win, how much inflation started to increase, and it only accelerated afterwards and then just went parabolic. And it destroyed their country, and it didn't take a lot of years to destroy the country. From 2012, even just to 2013, they went from 19% inflation to levels that were closer to 65%. One sec here, I'm going to decline this. Sorry, there's things going on today too. My nephew is potentially going to be having his first child today, so there's a lot of exciting stuff going on in our house. So I got to keep track of some of that as well. All right, again, I'm going to try and skip the older things. I will, if anybody has a better way of being able to track bookmarks, please let me know, because I've not found an easy way within X itself. For some reason, when you categorize them, they get really strange and they start to pop up all over the place. So I'm going to do the all bookmarks. It'll work better, but you'll see all the stuff I bookmarked, not just the ones under that category. So this is from Terrible. She says, does anyone believe Kamala anymore? It says, Kamala promises to build 3 million homes like we were talking about in 4 years. Biden-Harris built only 8 EV stations in 2.5 years with billions allocated. And I also threw up here, they also connected 0 people to the internet with billions of dollars allocated. So we have the history of what they've done, and then we have what they're promising. And then we know the inflation that will come along with the government just turning the money printer into perpetual motion. And this one says, Carrie Smith, Grandpa, what's a PSYOP? And there's a bunch of these across the mainstream media that you can see, but just like the word joy, which has been used lately. Harris used to worry about laughing, and weird was another one from a week or so ago. Now joy is fueling her campaign. Sweet emotion from Vanity Fair. How the Harris Walz ticket weirds joy, I don't even know, against Donald Trump. Bringing back, Salon says, bringing back the joy. Kamala Harris rally blows away J.D. Vance's weird appearance across town. Again, with the terms weird and joy. The Washington Post, Harris and Walz sees our joyful message in contrast to darker Trump themes. The Washington Post has started to turn on Kamala Harris. It's insane, which means Jeff Bezos has started to turn on her. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit here. This I wanted you guys here. This is, again, a billionaire, David Friedberg, talking about Kamala's plans. Last week, he was literally defending her in the All-in-One podcast and said that he was excited to hear about what her vision was. And this is what he said this week once he found out that she was trying to implement price controls and how they were planning on doing it. Now, note, this has not been officially released by their campaign yet, but it was published by major news organizations that are out there that are friendly to the Kamala campaign. So one has to assume these are what they are, but we'll find out and get clarification in the next couple of days. But listen to his comments about what he thinks of the plan.
What's your take on this reported by the Washington Post and I think confirmed by Politico move by Kamala Harris?
Thank you for asking.
Price fix.
Thank you for asking.
Do you have any feelings
Jake
on it? Yes. Yeah.
I unequivocally hate socialism. Socialism destroys innovation, destroys productivity, and destroys individual liberties. Agriculture and food markets have insanely competitive dynamics because there are commodity markets, there are tons of competitors. There is no monopoly in making food, there is no monopoly in making CPG products, there is no monopoly in retail, there is no monopoly in grocery stores. It is a small margin, highly competitive, highly fragmented, free market. And the free market works in that everyone is always competing with each other, creating new productivity improvements, and as a result, over time, prices come down, except when the government intervenes and gets involved.
Now, this is really important, guys. This is something I should almost have in my U.S. economics section within the market recap. This is literally talking about how this has played out for thousands of years with socialism, price control. So listen to this. Friedberg does a really great job explaining this in a short period of time. There's only 4 minutes left.
So I would argue that the real cause of price inflation in food is not the supposed price gouging by corporate players in the ag and food industry, all of whom are deeply competitive with one another, but rather is the result of the inflation associated with government spending and stimulus coming out of COVID. Nick, Exhibit 1, the Fed balance sheet. From COVID to today, the Fed balance sheet grew from $4.2 trillion to $7.2 trillion, a growth of 70%. The Federal Reserve went out and they bought assets and they issued debt to banks and introduced liquidity into the system. If you go to the next slide, as a result, the M2 money supply increased from 15 trillion to 21 trillion since COVID, a 40% increase. Okay, so now there is more money in the system.
40% increase since COVID. And then we're looking at inflation levels for housing, for different food related products, and they're incurring roughly the same kind of rate of inflation. It is the government money printer that we have to worry about. It's that capital getting allocated, getting lent out, being really put into the monetary system that we have to worry about in regard to inflation. It's not free market capitalism and price gouging, even though that's a fun talking point for politicians. It is not that in any way. So it's very important. Listen to the rest.
So the cost of everything should go up, which is exactly what we've seen. We can walk through a couple of the other commodity price charts from the St. Louis Fed. Here is the price of electricity. As an example, the price of electricity has gone up a little bit less than the M2 money supply. But the truth is, when you start to actually look at ag commodity prices over time, what's happened is there was certainly a boost coming from COVID, but the competition and the challenges in overproduction in the ag markets has started to hit and started to bring prices back down. So here's the price of strawberries. Strawberries today are selling for less than they were pre-COVID. Potatoes are now back to where they were pre-COVID. Now, let me give you some statistics on some of the supposed price gouging companies in the industry. Kraft Heinz stock pre-COVID was $29 a share. Today, Kraft Heinz stock is $34 a share. 2019 revenue of $25 billion, 2023 revenue of $26 billion. EBITDA in 2019 of $6.1 billion, EBITDA in 2023 of $6.3 billion. There's not a lot of profit gouging. In fact, Kraft Heinz has not been able to keep up with the inflation. Starbucks, which we just talked about, their stock was at $90 pre-COVID and today $93. 2019 revenue of $26 billion, operating income of $4.1 billion, 2023 revenue of $36 billion, but operating income only 5.9. Margins have come down in Starbucks. Nick, if you pull up the McKinsey chart.
Again, these are specific examples showing what is naturally occurring within business that's making it to where these companies are having to figure out whether or not they have price competitiveness. I'd play the rest of this, but it gets really big into the specifics. Definitely look at the All-in-One podcast. Check out this post. It's all very valuable information. But the thing I wanted you to understand is that even billionaires that are very liberal and democratic are like, this is absolute insanity. If you've run a business, you need to understand just how bad this is. Let's real quickly. This is a Donald Trump advertisement coming out. Well, it's not an official ad, but it's a post that he did of one of his advertisements that's getting airtime here. Let's listen to it.
Yeah, I am radical. We need to get radical about what we are doing and take it seriously. As President of the United States, I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal.
The Green New Deal would literally have us not flying planes in our country. You would only be able to do it for international flight, if you can imagine such a thing. It would also make it to where all ICE vehicles were prohibited from being on the road by 2030, or at least these are the previous plans of it, right? These are things that are majorly disruptive, where government is having an encroaching amount of control over our lives and over businesses, just like they were talking about with their ability to control zoning laws. We would have Big Brother like you've never seen before. Let's keep listening.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
But then later she says that she isn't. So
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
She wants to take our guns away, not from the criminals. Well, I mean, maybe the criminals will steal guns so that they can sell them back to the government. I don't know.
I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance.
Let's eliminate all of that.
She wants socialist healthcare. And if you've heard anything like from the UK or Canada, these people wait in long lines and or just die waiting so that they can get health and treatment. You don't have that in the United States. You might be bankrupt where you have to file bankruptcy and start over, but you get to keep all your investments and other things. But at least you'll be alive. You don't get that in these countries. She wants to remove private health insurance and have the government control all these things. That would just, oh my God.
But would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. What would people
Yes.
to reduce red meat specifically?
Yes, I would.
Can't eat meat anymore, guys. These are the kind of things that we're looking at.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants.
Where do you stand on defund the police?
This whole movement is about rightly saying we need to take a look at these budgets.
So we're gonna defund the police. It's just all these policies are absolutely absurd.
Harris asserted that ICE is perceived as the modern-day Ku Klux Klan.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a
perception? That puts ICE in the same category as the KKK. Is that what you're asking me? I see no parallel.
I'm not finished.
I see none.
And I listened to that whole thing. She literally was equating ICE to being a terrorist organization, or the perception of that, which is absurd. These people are just doing their jobs, trying to ensure that there's not illegal immigration in the country, something that the government told them to do. So it's absurdity.
Yeah, I am radical. We need to get radical about what we are doing.
I think this is a brilliant ad. Again, if you didn't know that Kamala was the most radical liberal senator or liberal politician in the Democratic Party and senator, and that this is the kind of agenda she's looking to push, you do now. So definitely realize what's coming. Now, this says the DNC will prove why Kamala Harris should not be in power. It says at least 100,000 anti-Israel protesters are expected to descend on Chicago for the DNC next week. The protesters comes as the left becomes increasingly divided over the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's not just that. There's so much else going on. We're looking at this happening. We're also looking at the LGBTQ plus group. We're also looking at people that are mad about illegal immigration. Sorry, I got to fix this. We're looking at people that are mad about illegal immigration in the country. There's going to be a lot of people in Chicago protesting that too. So you're looking at just like a culmination of a lot of craziness that's getting ready to happen in this city. And it's only going to get weirder, guys. I told you that last week. You're going to see more of it. Now, that same city where Tim Walz basically, acquitted somebody who killed an 11-year-old girl, and then the person got charged later on with drugs and guns. This is the kind of lawlessness. I live next to this state, and I go to Minneapolis a decent amount, multiple times a year. This is the kind of lawlessness that exists in this city right now. You could just tell the police that they're pigs and tell them to F off and do whatever you want to and drive insane, and nothing happens.
What the fuck
nothing
are you
happens
here for? Y'all don't do shit.
Again, nothing happens. Like this is what's going to happen with this country more and more and more as time goes on, if we allow these guys to be in power. And I'll say this. So now it's been over a month that Kamala's been out there, and she still refuses to take reporter questions. She took them like a couple of low balls at one time getting out of a plane. That was it. She hasn't done anything since. She still hasn't done a debate. We've been promised one, skipping the Fox News one. It literally, like, this lady's trying to hide. I would argue this is one of the reasons she's trying to hide. Listen to this exchange between Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris in the debates.
Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place. that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
You'll have to look up the rest of that exchange. She destroyed her. And I think that that's the fear that they have right now, too, is that especially with Tulsi Gabbard working with the Trump campaign in order to be able to try and get him prepared for the upcoming debates. So I think they're just really frightened right now. They're trying to lay low. They know that their policies are not working great, and they want to hide. Let me get caught up with questions here real quick. Les Walter, is it true Alex Karp? So I said, I don't know if Alex Karp is voting for Kamala. He's very, very liberal. I do agree with him when it comes to our stance on what we need to be doing with our military. If he is voting for Kamala Harris, then it saddens me that he doesn't understand some of the basics of economics and price controls, or just a slew of other reasons of why this woman should not be in power. So I don't know what he's doing with that. It would definitely be disheartening to find out that that was true. Les Walter, downtown Minneapolis is a no-go zone except for sports people who mostly stay away from it. Man, downtown Minneapolis, I've got some video, I'm sure, of just how insane it is. It's a frightening place to go to. You have to be ready to be mugged, shot, any number of things that can happen to you. So, but let's get back to the point here. So, Defiant L's says it won't be difficult for Harris. Look at this, CNBC. Vance wants to raise the child tax credit to $5,000. Here's why that could be difficult. Then 4 days later, Harris calls for expanded child tax credit of $6,000 for families with newborns. Nothing negative in the Harris one, but totally negative in the stance with Vance. And again, just trying to up them like, oh, 5,000, we'll do 6,000. That's how we can buy your votes. It won't be by the authenticity of our policies. It won't be on whether or not those are good for you. It'll be, we'll promise more than the other guys. And that's a horrible way for something to be. I'm going to skip that one. So again, George says, this is hilarious. Chicago city officials also failed to meet the deadline for rejecting applications from various groups to protest outside the DNC venue. So the Democratic Party that runs Chicago didn't reject the applications for these groups to protest outside of the DNC. And so now they're going to get a taste of all this absurdity because they didn't do their job. So I just think that's fascinating. It's going to make it to where it's a very interesting thing. Now, here's another one I want you guys to hear. This is insane. So this is Kamala Harris talking in the way back about ending the gender pay gap. I'll tell you why this is insane, but listen to her own words real quick.
For every 1% differential between what they are paying men and women for equal work, there will be a fine of 1% of their previous year's profits.
I'm sorry. So if women aren't making the exact same as men, is what she's saying, and there's let's say there's a 10% differential. Let's say that there's a woman that's in the job that doesn't make. How does she even gauge this? Does she take the highest paid man in a position? How do you control this on a national level? But regardless of all of that, what do? Take the highest paid man and then look at a woman in the similar position? If there's a 20% pay gap, then the government is going to take 20% of the profits of that company. What the actual fuck is that? What is that? This is insane, guys. This is the woman that wants power. This is the woman who's at the stroke of a pen. She realized how much power she had to destroy people and take everything in their life away and any influence that they had. And then she could also, with the stroke of a pen, give them back their lives. This is the woman we're talking about putting in power. Breaking, a lawsuit got filed against the Wisconsin Election Commission and the DMV for failing to verify voter registrants are U.S. citizens. According to the official data, over 72,000 permanent non-residents in the state have identical driver's license compared to U.S. Citizens, according to election president. He also says the number could be as high as 300,000. So again, if you're in doubt on whether or not Democrats want to steal this election, not all of them, but some of them, here it is, right here, clearly in front of us. Kamala affiliated accounts sharing misleading footage. Who would have known? So in the top, you see what was very popular, I think yesterday, maybe even the day before, showing that a campaign in Pennsylvania had nobody in it. But the reality is on the bottom. This misinformation campaign is everywhere, guys. And I'm a centrist who voted for Joe Biden. This is very real. This is the kind of stuff that they're trying to do in order to confuse voters on who they should vote for. And again, so not only was X like the biggest stream ever on X for the interview between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, but there are 3 TikToks Trump posted in the last 72 hours, this is about a day ago, have reached a total of 36 million views, and a large majority of these are between the ages of 18 and 44. Trump's account also has one of the highest engagement rates on the app. There's more, but we'll see a bunch here in a second. This is just a little bit. This is a tidbit of some of the stuff that's happening right now. Also, I believe this strongly. Some people think I'm just like a bad person now because I support Donald Trump. But I believe that Vivek puts it very clearly on the thoughts of diversity and just the strength that comes from America. I'm going to let him say his spiel, and then I'll give you my comment.
We celebrate all of our differences. Our diversity is our strength, they'll say. When we've forgotten actually what unites us across that diversity. Think about it. Without that, what are we? We're just a bunch of, I'm looking around this room. I see different shades of melanin. I see a couple of different genders. 2 of them. So we are diverse. That's great. So what? Unless there is something greater that unites us across that diversity.
And I do agree about this. I think you have to have a country that's united around the beliefs of the country. Democracy, capitalism, freedom are some of the uniting factors, I believe, in the United States that separate us from so many other countries in the world. Again, freedom of speech is not in the UK. It doesn't exist in Canada. They didn't have this as a declaration of their constitution. We have that. You have to have, I believe, a similar belief structure, at least based upon morality and the overall arching goals of your country in order for it to be successful. You can't have diversity for the sake of diversity, and you can't have these kind of mandates with beliefs that can be very radical and opposing to what the country should be, what you believe you want it to be, right? So again, diversity for the sake of diversity, I don't think is healthy at all. And I just wanted to reiterate that. Also, Ricky Gervais, there's so much going on right now, guys, in the world, especially if you're paying attention to what's happening in the UK and other parts of Europe. And I think Ricky Gervais says a lot of this really well. I want you to hear him. I want you to hear his thoughts. I believe they're some of the most enlightened that I've heard from anybody, let alone a comedian.
But these people are virtue signaling. They're trying to bring people down to raise their own status. And they say it's because, no, we're protecting minorities. Like, they're basically saying minorities haven't got a sense of humour, which is so patronising. And I get that as well, to what it's like to be outnumbered. In this country, we're still only 5% black, 5% Asian, 5% LGBTQ, tiny numbers. Now, I'm a white, heterosexual multimillionaire, right?
Me too.
There's less than 1% of us. Do I whine? No. I don't mind. I just get on with it. Come on, Rick. Come on, Rick.
The whole thing is a little bit better. I thought there was more to it than that. But again, I'm in the same boat as him. I'm in the 1% in that category too. But here's the thing. I posted something about this earlier too. When I was a child, we were quite poor at times. For half a year, I had to live with our grandmother because we didn't have a place to live. Okay, we literally didn't have a place to live or any money to support ourselves. So I get a little pissed when I hear about entitlement. We're just gonna fix this. We're gonna keep that down there. I get a little pissed when I hear about entitlement and how because I'm white, I've had life so easy. I did not have life easy. I could have failed at multiple points. I lived down south for a lot of my life too, and I went to schools where, because we were super poor, they were like 90% black, and then like maybe another 6 or 7% were other minorities, and then it was me and a couple of other white people. So I've seen what it's like to be like the minority. I can appreciate the plight very, very well from my own personal experience. And I can tell you this, your ability to rise up, are there prejudices in life? Does it help if you're really good looking? Might it help in some areas if you're white? Nowadays, it probably helps if you're black because of DEI. But are there obstacles that are set up against all of us? Yes, there are. But if you act like victims in life and like other people don't have struggles too, then you will always be a failure. That's the thing I want to preach to everybody, irregardless of the color of your skin or where you come back, what your religion is. Ignore that stuff. Focus on fitting in, working hard, and trying to accomplish great things in the area you live in. And if you don't have opportunity, fucking move. A bus ticket will get you where you can have a life. Otherwise, again, and I don't want to say that like black people don't have a hard time or that some minorities, they do. It sucks when you grow up in a city that's violent and you could get shot going to school. That's absurdness, but that requires that we give these guys more security and the opportunity for an education that's just as good, and we do things where we provide economic zones to try and help people that are in these communities get loans so that they can enrich and embetter them. It's not like they can't do things on their own. We can help with those things, but people need to stop being victims. I don't care who you are. Stop being a victim and figure out how to empower yourself in your life. And I think you'll live a much better one. And that's my 2 cents. And again, Ricky Gervais is funny as hell. All right. Insurrection Barbie. Love her name. Donald Trump live streamed his rally on TikTok, and it's the highest viewed stream on TikTok to date. That seems pretty impressive. It seems like a big deal. Let's listen to a Pennsylvania grandma talk about how she's going to vote for Trump.
I was a Democrat most of my life. I only turned Republican in the last 4 years. I've been a Democrat. My father was a Democrat in politics. Democrats are not the same as they were many years ago. It's like a role reversal. It seems good is bad, bad is good nowadays. I know my father will turn over in his grave, but I don't think so. Not when he sees the standards that we have to live with today.
I love that. There's so many people that feel this way right now. We're going to cut it here in a little bit, but I wanted to talk to a couple of more points. I wanted to talk about inflation and how it's a political decision from Murray Rothbard. There's a bunch like this, but let's just listen to it here. Or not listen, I'll read it. So, if the chronic inflation undergone by Americans in almost every other country is caused by the continuing creation of new money, and if in each country its governmental central bank, in the United States the Federal Reserve, is the sole monopoly source and creator of money, who is responsible for the blight of inflation? Who, except the very institution that is solely empowered to create money? That is the Fed and the Bank of England and the Bank of Italy and other central banks itself. And he's 100% right. They're the cause of inflation. They're the ones distorting the markets. And it's a very, very important thing to understand. Also, Wall Street Silver had this great one here. It shows Illinois is number 3 among biggest population losers in 2022. These stats haven't gotten better over the last 2 years, but I wanted to use them to illustrate something. Look, California, huge. Look at this. Oregon, huge. Minnesota, huge. Chicago, Illinois area, huge. New York area, huge. Why are all of these declining? Because they're heavily blue states that have implemented policies that nobody wants. Nobody. Also, Tim Walz, otherwise known as Minnie Mao, this article, read it. It's from Alpha News. Just Google it. It talks about how the 30 times that Walz went to China. Also, too, he was praising China like weeks after Tiananmen Square. And they slaughtered all these young people, students who wanted to be free. He said nothing negative about that at all. And a lot of his time in China was paid for by the Chinese government. This is the guy who's the VP of the United States, or would be if we elected him. I think that, and again, there's more. We already have. So GPS tracking has 53,000 foreign Antifa and 21,000 domestic Antifa that are gathering in Chicago to create chaos. I can only imagine what that's going to end up looking like. And you guys might have heard me say this a few times, that Kamala's father was a Marxist professor. Here he is in a 1974 article. Radical economist visiting economies, the professor. Public meeting on January 18th on students' request. Former commitment by the department to establish a field in radical political economics. His pending departure and the likelihood of no new Marxian economists will be hired. Form the basis of some of the student complaints. They wanted Marxism, guys. They wanted communism to be talked about. It's just absurdity. We kind of already talked about this. We're going to skip that. He has good points. I like this guy that I'm following here. This is funny. Dave Brown says, liberals, if we could just jail Trump, get rid of MAGA, in the Electoral College, stack the Supreme Court, ban voter ID, and censor free speech, we could save democracy. This is a joke, but it's not. It's not a joke. Also, this is Lynn Alden. She's just talking about inflation and just reiterating some of the other things that we heard. She talks specifically about food, too, and what a tough market it is and how it isn't easily price gouged. I said in here that we're headed a lot higher with Bitcoin's price, especially when real Donald Trump's poll numbers increase in the weeks ahead, locking in his win for the presidency. I strongly believe that. That's a political statement that I think some people don't want to hear, but I do believe it's the truth, so I will say it. Blair White, Chicago businesses are boarding up because of the DNC. Isn't it funny how the party of tolerance and joy comes to town and everyone has to brace for violence in a liberal town run by a liberal Democratic mayor, and they have to worry about violence and extremism. It's insane. Listen to this pregnant lady talk about this. It's the south side of Chicago. Let's listen to her two thoughts about this Democratic National Convention.
Looking at they have the military grade and getting everything set up 2 days before it's even supposed to go down. This is getting real, okay? This is not a joke. The DNC is really coming here. The protesters are really acting a fool right now, and I just wanted to do this little TikTok just to prepare my Chicagoans. Like, this is not a joke. It's not just the Palestinians. There are a lot of Black Americans that will be out there protesting as well, because they are sick of the immigrant issue that we have. There are a lot of people, Black and brown, that are just very upset with Kamala, and they want to give her a warm welcome. So this is to my...
So I want to reiterate this. The rest of the video is pretty good, but we are seeing conflicting forces. The blacks population, if she's right, and we see them come out in force because of the illegal immigration, and I've seen so many videos talking about the problems from black community, from veterans, from all kinds of people in Chicago that are angry about what's happened with immigration and everybody getting dumped because it's a sanctuary city like some of these others. If we see a bunch of the black population and just other people that are anti-immigration converging with pro-Palestinians who are and then we also have LGBTQ plus. I think I'm gonna have one of those in here too. These are three very opposing forces. This is gonna turn into a shit show, I believe. And I'm just trying to reiterate that. I want you guys to understand this is coming and it's gonna get crazy. Let's listen to this guy's opinion too on Chicago.
Hello, TikTok. For any of you that don't believe they're putting fences up around buildings, here's an example today.
And this is a small one. There are some major reinforced fences. There's layers of them, guys.
If you want to see it in person, it's right across from the Sears Tower.
And this is just them trying to protect the Sears Tower. The Democratic National Convention is it's way better than probably like half the fences that the Democrats have seen at the southern border. All right, let's take a look here real quick. We saw that one. There's just one more I'm trying to find here real quick. Oh yeah, I was talking earlier about how Kamala was running away from reporters even still. This is just yesterday. Nothing. Again, more fences going up around the Democratic National Convention, not just the Sears Tower. We already saw this one from the people that are protesting downtown. Here's a good one. I want to show this to you. And again, if I can ever figure out how to get bookmarks to work properly in X, or maybe I just have to bookmark them independently, it will be a hassle. But this is Thomas Sowell quotes. It says, I've been doing studies now for 20 years of programs designed to increase equality. They increase inequality. This is a short one. I just want to play it.
Justified on the assumption that they are equalizing. I think the crucial thing is that when you try to create this equality, you don't create the equality, you create something else. I've been doing studies now for 20 years of programs designed to increase equality. They increase inequality because even when the programs are designed for disadvantaged groups, they help the affluent members of disadvantaged groups, while the lower members of those groups fall further behind than ever before. And not just in the United States, in India, to some extent in Malaysia, the very same thing is happening. No.
Again, this is important. If you're black, do you feel like the Democratic Party has done a great job helping you be able to rise up and find equality? I showed some stats about how, especially over the last 4 years since the pandemic, the terms about that racial terms, sexual terms like LGBTQ+ and discrimination and all these things have increased exponentially since that time. So do you feel like the Democratic Party has welcomed you and done a great job with all of this stuff? If you don't, then I think you need to reconsider and actually think about who you're going to support. This is also some more of the protests. This is a very short clip. It's 6 seconds long. Killer Kamala, Gaza speaking. Again, you just have their own party wants to eat itself. It wants to eat itself. And I think it's important to look at these little stickers that they're putting all over the place. They want to shut down the Democratic National Convention, and they're going after Kamala. This is their own people. It's just absolutely insane. Real quickly, I want to listen to a Venezuelan immigrant talk about his concerns on socialism real quick at a Trump rally.
First of all, hi everybody. Thank you for coming here and supporting the president. I'm gonna say the first part of the speech, of my story in English, then I'm gonna repeat it in Spanish in order to allow our Latino voters to understand and hear what the situation is going on. First of all, as the president already said, I'm from Venezuela. I left the country in 2007 because of communism. I still have family there. There's been family that that has left even before me or are continuously living little by little. But going further back, my grandparents from my mom's side were from Cuba. They were at university when the communist revolution was going on, and they ended up leaving to Venezuela. They only had the money they received for their wedding present, and they were living in a mid-house, going to school, and trying to move ahead. My granddad ended up becoming a doctor and had a family raising 3 children, my mom and my 2 uncles. When in the early 1990s, Chavez did a military coup, and right after he ran for president, my granddad saw the similarities to what was happening in Cuba, and he told everybody that would listen to him that it was coming. And everybody was like, nah, this is Venezuela, this is not Cuba, this will never happen to us. And guess what? It happened to us, and has been happening to other Latin American countries as well. So when they tell you here,
Brazil is not much further off. Again, X had to basically shut down their location there because they were afraid that their legal representation was going to be imprisoned from the threats of the judicial branch. Violating their own laws in Brazil, they're requiring X to censor stuff. This is happening more and more around the world, not just Central America. That's why it's important that America be a beacon of freeness.
It will never happen. That's not true. We lived it, now here we are. So, in 2007, we ended up leaving because the socialists and the government started changing the education system to make it more like the Cuban education system. It might ring a bell to what's going on here as well. So, it's extremely important for everybody to keep this in mind. And if you don't mind, I'm going to switch to Spanish for our Latino speakers.
Just again, really short, articulate. Also, I want you guys to see this. This is Minneapolis. This is the city that Walz literally let burnt down when he rejected the request from the Minneapolis mayor, another Democrat, to try and get help to prevent this from happening. He literally let a police district burnt down in representation of. His wife said that she opened the windows all around the house so that she could smell it burning, because they somehow think of this as a beautiful, liberating thing. A lot of these buildings haven't even been rebuilt. These communities are devastated by this. And this is something that he wanted, that his wife was excited about, that his own daughter messaged a bunch of people on social media saying, hey guys, the guard isn't going to be there. It's all yours. You'll also see a bunch of anarchy symbols. Yeah, a bunch of people, a lot of them white, just burning down parts of the city that are black owned. It's just sad. It's sad. Just keeps going on. I think that Walgreens is still closed. These companies just don't want to come back. Would you want to come back? Again, this is like, so this is what I feel like we're gonna have more coming from. And oh, this is a great one too. But I'm gonna stop here for the day. I'm gonna save a little bit here for another video tomorrow. But again, this is what we're looking at as a country. We're looking at a presidential candidate that represents chaos. That will be evident with the Democratic National Convention this week and Kamala Harris. We represent a presidential candidate who is all about spending exorbitant amounts of money without encouraging growth, because she hates capitalism and believes in Marxism and socialism. She believes that you create equity, and the way to do that is to basically eliminate profits from private organizations in order to ensure that they are forced to pay a woman or a minority the exact same amount they pay one of the highest returning people in the building. Because if everybody makes the same money, then everything all of a sudden is better and equal, and that will just destroy capitalism and business in this country, and it will flee for whatever place will embrace it. Maybe that's Argentina, maybe it's El Salvador, maybe it's any number of other countries that are starting to become free that weren't free. And so you're going to see. And then again, all the price controlling, the rents, all the stuff you just heard about them wanting to be responsible, the federal government for being able to zone districts around the country. This is just a gross overstep by the federal government. These policies are absolutely insane. You listen to Democrats that wanted to support Kamala Harris that are telling you that this stuff is insane and that these are policies that would destroy this country. Right here, this video from Shermichael Singleton literally talks about how just some of the basics that we've gotten so far out of this economic plan are $2 trillion in costs. And how are we going to pay for that? Are we going to raise taxes on the middle class? Because you can't get this money from the wealthy. It won't be enough. And are we going to cut Social Security in the military? What are we going to do to pay for it? And again, this is just, the problem is this woman, Kamala Harris, had a father who was a Marxist economist and who knows nothing about actually managing an economy and doesn't believe in capitalism. And that will be the destruction of us. So I strongly believe that if Kamala becomes elected, and I don't think she will be, but if she is, find a different place to live. That's what I'll be doing. Anyway, I love you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and let's pray that the next 3 months show that Donald Trump